Welcome back, everyone. This is Professor Robert Solis. We're going to talk about our next video lesson, still talking about functions, and we're still working with the previous code that we worked with, but I want to create two new functions, but these two new functions are not going to have parameters. So I want to show you an example of creating functions without having to send any arguments. They're still going to return something, but they can do their job without having to send any data. Well, I'm going to create a function called calculate area and calculate circumference. What am I going to do? Because you need the radius. Well, what I'll do is I'll create a global variable. And so this global variable, which I will call radius global, of course I wouldn't normally put that word global there. I'm just doing it to make sure that I make the point to you. This is a global variable. Everyone can see this. So in my main function over here, it says radius is double. And the radius is going to be from the text box. I think what I'll do is I'll add one more chunk of code that the radius global is also going to be convert.toDouble anything from whatever is inside the text box, txt radius. And so let me comment this out. This is like version 1. And I'm also going to comment these two lines as well. We'll type in something brand new. All right, so I don't need this over here. This variable, radius global, has been declared outside of any sub or function. You can see it doesn't belong inside of anything. It's inside the class. So everyone can see it. And so over here, I get whatever's in that text box, and I convert it to a double, and I assign it into radius global. Now let me, before I continue on with my btn calculate click function, let me go ahead and create these two functions called calculate area, but I'll say calculate area 2 or version 2, right? And calculate circumference version 2. So over here, I'll say function calculate area version 2. Version 2 is the one that doesn't require any arguments. Check this out. Open and close parentheses as double. So this is going to be an example of something that doesn't require data. It doesn't require arguments to do its job. My previous version of calculate area did require something. It required that I send the radius. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take advantage of this, that I've created a global radius value or variable to use that. So what I'll do is I'll just simply say return, and the area is pi r squared, so math.pi times, and we'll say r squared, we're going to use that function called mathpal, radius global 2.0. So I did not have to send a parameter to this function. You can see the open and close parentheses. I'm taking advantage of this radius global variable. Everyone can see this. I square it, multiply times pi, and I return whatever the area is for this particular global variable. Let's do the same thing again with calculate circumference version 2. So over here, I'll just simply say function calculate circumference, and I'll say this is also version 2. Open and close parentheses. This is an example of a function that does not receive any parameters, as you can see here, but it can still do its job because we have access to the global variable. So this is going to return. Now a circumference is 2 pi r, so that's going to be 2 times pi times r, and r in our case is radius global, the variable that I declared at the top. So as you can see, the difference between these two functions, well, they both calculate area and calculate circumference, but one receives information and the other does not require information. They both return something, right? So we're going to return a double, and we're going to return a double over here. So they both return something, and the difference is one receives parameters, one does not. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is use these two new functions. So over here, where it says calculate, calculation and output, let me just hit enter a couple of times. We'll say LBL area dot text. And I think I'm going to use the version where I have 2 numbers after the decimal point. So I'm going to call this function calculate area version 2. That's the one that I need. Double click, open parens. Look at this. It doesn't require any parameters. You can see the open and close parens with it's blank. And what will this thing return? A double. So all I have to do is that. Whoops, sorry. I meant to put my cursor out here. Dot to string. Specifically, give me a formatted output with 2 numbers after the decimal point. Let's do the same thing for LBL circumference. So LBL circumference dot text. We have a function for that. It's called calculate circumference version 2. This version does not require any arguments. In other words, you see the open and close parentheses. Also, I want to make sure that this thing displays only 2 numbers after the decimal point. So format 2 numbers after the decimal point. Okay, let me save my work, run the program. Here we go. All right, so let me enter the number 2. And so you can see here only 2 numbers after the decimal point. The program still works, even though we've created 2 functions that don't receive any parameters, namely because I took advantage of a global variable that everyone has access to. And that's it. All right, so this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. You guys have a good day. See you next time.